Good morning, students. As we were discussing John Donne's sonnet, Death Be Not Proud. Today, I have already given you introduction, and now today we will be just discussing it, the analysis of it line wise. And sonnet, as we have already discussed, given you all the introduction of 14 lines and other details. So, I'll just start with the particular sonnet. Now, see the first two lines. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. So, what he is wanting to emphasize, he has personified death, and he is saying death, we shouldn't be scared of death, and death as a person should not feel very proud about himself, because not only the poet but others are also not having any fear of death. So the speaker immediately creates a personified version of death by talking directly to him. Him means death. Now he paints a picture of death as an arrogant being and one who needs to be humbled. The speaker assumes the position of the one who must humble this being, death. He tells him that he ought not to be so proud, even though for generations people have feared death and called him mighty and dreadful. So, the speaker, however, with a voice of absolute authority on the matter, simply states, Thou art not so. This poet uses the literally tactic of apostrophe. Now, you see, there is a use of apostrophe, that is to drive home his point. Apostrophe occurs when a writer addresses a subject who cannot respond. Readers know immediately that this sonnet will consist of one speaker who will do all of the talking and accusing of his subject. Death, though adequately personified, cannot respond. So that makes the poet stands more what you say powerful. Now see the third and fourth line. For those whom thou think thou dost overthrow, die not, poor death, nor yet can thou kill me. So, again, that means death is powerless. Now, in which sense? Here, the speaker accuses death of having illusions of grandeur. That means you are not at all so great. He claims that while death thinks that he has the power to kill, he actually does not. The speaker first humbles death by telling him that his idea that he has the power to overthrow lives is simply an illusion, because death doesn't have that power, and that he has no such power at all. Then, to further humiliate death, the speaker calls him poor death. It sounds almost as if the speaker is making fun of death for having lived under the illusion that he had any sort of power over life or death. Then he addresses death in a more personal manner, challenging him by saying, Yet can thou kill me? Means you cannot kill me. It seems dangerous for one to threaten death in this way. However, knowledge of John Donne's background and ideologies can give some insight into the speaker's confidence here. Though everyone knows that physical death does indeed occur, the speaker is challenging death in a different way. He uses the Christian theology of eternity to taunt death by telling him essentially, even if you take my physical body, you can never truly kill me. Now, see the lines, line number 5 to 6. Just to quote, from rest and sleep, which but thy pictures be, much pleasure, then from thee much more must flow. Unquote. Now, with these lines, the speaker compares death to rest and sleep, and even uses the word pleasure. Now, see, now death is not at all fearful, rather, it is sort of eternal rest, it is sort of sleep, and it is giving you pleasure as sleep does. So, to describe how one should feel about death, just as a restful night of sleep brings pleasure, so should death. The speaker implies that sleep is simply a small glimpse of death. Thus, there is nothing to fear in death, for death will bring something like a pleasurable sleep. Now, see, students, line number 7 to 8, just to quote, and soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and souls delivery, unquote. Yeah, that is, poet says that the best men, they don't survive on this earth for a long time. And so he says that is for their better, because death is like, taking away all the miseries which these people are facing on this earth. So here the speaker says that the best men seem to experience death the soonest, while others have long questioned why it seems as if the best people die soonest. The speaker offers an answer here, suggesting that the best among men deserve to experience the peaceful rest of death sooner, without having to endure the agonies of a long life on the earth. So here again, so you find a lot of positivity even when he is talking about death. The speaker describes death as rest of their bones and soul's delivery. Both of these descriptions make death seem like a welcome friend who comes to graciously offer rest and peace and the deliverance of one's souls from an earthly body where pain and suffering abide. Now, to come to line number 9 and 10. So, just to quote, thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and does with poison, war, and sickness dwell, unquote. So, here the speaker takes on a stronger tone and begins to taunt death with more ferocity than he did at first. Because what he is saying, that you are slave to chance, you are slave to fate. Okay, so here he calls death a slave to chance, kings, and desperate men. He tells death that he is not mighty and dreadful, but rather a poor slave, because he has to rely on these things, on these people. Rather, a poor slave who cannot even act on his own, but is driven not only by fate and chance, but also by people, rich and poor alike. He then accuses death of having lowly companions such as poison, war, and sickness. He has taunted death, telling him that he is not to be feared, but rather he is a slave to the will of fate and war. So, these accusations, they serve to allow the readers to feel a sense of power and victory over death. So, the speaker certainly feels authority over death, and he passes this feeling along to his readers when he puts death in his place by talking down to him. Now, coming to line number 11 and 12, I'll just quote the lines. And poppy or charms can make us sleep as well, and better than thy stroke, why swellest thou then? There is a question mark. Yes. Why, O death, why are you so proud? Why are you so proud of yourself? Because the work, your job can be easily done even by a poppy, or it can intoxicate you. That is what he is saying. The speaker continues to taunt death even more, saying that all he brings is a little sleep, and he doesn't even do that as well as some other bringers of rest such as poppy or charms. So this comparison further portrays death as something not only weak but even pleasurable. The speaker questions death asking, why swellest thou then? He is asking him why he is so puffed up with pride when he cannot even do his job as well as others can. Now, coming to the conclusion, coming to the final lines, that is sonnets line number 13 and 14, I'll just quote the lines. To quote, one short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. Now, see the contradiction here. With these final lines, the speaker reveals exactly why he has been taunting death so relentlessly. Although it is obvious that death is real and that people who experience death do not come back to earth, the speaker reveals his reasons for claiming that death is weak and easily overcome. He claims that death is only one short sleep, and that those who experience death with wake eternally, then he claims that death shall be no more. Finally, he tells death, thou shalt die, not I or not others, but you are going to die, that you are going to be powerless. Rather, we are going to live. Our physical body may die, may perish, but our soul is going to live long. So the speaker has not only told death that he has no real power over anyone, but that he will experience the end of himself. That means death will experience death. Okay? When all wake in eternity and death will be no more. So he has made death to be powerless. So that is the main aim of the poet, and that is fulfilled. So students, today's lecture I end here. So thank you for your patience. Thank you so much, and tomorrow we'll take next poem. Thank you for your patience.